disaster in history occurred. The deadliest tropical storm in history, known as the 1970 Bengal cyclone or Cyclone Bhoola, struck the territory of modern Bangladesh and West Bengal, India on 12 to 13 November 1970. It is estimated that between 300,000 and 500,000 people died as a result of this natural disaster, making it the deadliest tropical cyclone in history and one of the deadliest natural disasters ever. Cyclone Bhoola formed over the Bay of Bengal on November 8, 1970, and rapidly gained strength as it moved northeast. By November 12th, its wind speed had reached 185 kilometers per hour, and the pressure at the center of the hurricane was 966 bar. The greatest damage was caused to the coastal areas of Bengal, where storm surges raised the water level by 10 meters, flooding vast areas and destroying settlements. The areas of Bhola, Tazamuddin, Manpur, and Katia were particularly hard hit, with more than 85% of the population perishing as a result of the disaster. About 400,000 homes were destroyed or damaged, and the total damage from the storms is estimated at $86.4 million. It is important to note that at that time, Bengal was one of the poorest and most overpopulated areas in the world, which significantly exacerbated the consequences of the disaster. Cyclone Bhoola was a turning point in the history of tropical cyclone research and forecasting. In particular, after this tragedy, a decision was made to establish specialized meteorological services and early warning systems for approaching hurricanes and cyclones. In 1972, the World Meteorological Organization, WMO, was founded, which has since been coordinating weather research and forecasting at the international level. Today, thanks to advances in science and technology, scientists and meteorologists are able to predict the approach of dangerous tropical storms and warn the population of possible threats. However, the experience of Cyclone Bhoola shows that even the most advanced technologies cannot completely protect us from the destructive force of nature. Therefore, it is important not only to develop new methods of forecasting and warning, but also to strive to reduce risks and strengthen the resilience of society in the face of natural disasters. Bhoola killed up to 500,000 people and led to the collapse of the state. On November 12, 1970, a tropical cyclone struck the territory of modern India and Bangladesh, the deadliest in history, according to various estimates. Between 300,000 and 500,000 people died. Not only did it cause enormous destruction, but also provoked a war and contributed to the formation of an independent state that still exists today. How did this tragedy become possible? Why was no warning given to the civilian population? And how was this natural disaster linked to politics? Spoiler: human casualties were beneficial to the dictatorship? Find out in our article. 2 Pakistans and 1 India. To understand the significance of this tragedy and the reasons why the natural disaster was so deadly, we need to take a look back at history. Back in the 19th century, this ethnically diverse region was conquered by Great Britain. The local population fought long and hard for independence, and finally achieved it after the Second World War. Britain emerged victorious from the conflict and received its zone of occupation in Germany, but its economy was extremely depleted, and it no longer had the strength to resolve issues in Asia. Therefore, it decided to grant India independence and create 2 countries with Hindu and Muslim populations. Louis Mountbatten, the last Viceroy of London, developed a program known as the Mountbatten Plan. It provided for the self-determination of each region. The population itself had to decide which country it would join. In 1947, as a result of the implementation of this plan, 2 countries emerged, India and Muslim Pakistan. However, significant groups of Muslims and Hindus still remained in the minority in the new countries, which led to the migration of millions of people. Between 10 and 12 million people were forced to move, and the deaths of thousands as a result of violence. India and Pakistan have never been able to divide the Kashmir region, which remains a bone of contention between them. Pakistan consisted of 2 parts, Western and Eastern. The latter was originally called East Bengal, but was later renamed East Pakistan and is now Bangladesh. India was located between these two parts, according to journalist Scott Carney, who wrote a book about those events. East Pakistan was governed, almost like a colonial fiefdom of the western part of the country. The Bengalis, inhabitants of the eastern part of the country, were outraged by the rejection of Bengali as an official language, the dominance of non-Bengalis in the bureaucracy, the appropriation of revenues by the central government, and the need to coordinate local issues and problems with it. It is not surprising that as early as 1965, Mujibur Rahman, leader of the Awami League Party, demanded autonomy for East Pakistan. However, the authorities did not agree. In 1969, General Yahya Khan, formerly Chief of Staff of the Army, became president and de facto dictator of Pakistan that he adhered to the same policy. Such was the situation in a Pakistan torn in two in the year before the disaster. What is a tropical cyclone? It is an intense, circular storm that forms over warm, tropical oceans and is characterized by low atmospheric pressure, strong winds, and heavy rainfall. When its winds exceed 119 kilometers per hour, a weak tropical cyclone can turn into a stronger one. In extreme cases, wind speeds can exceed 240 kilometers per hour, with gusts of up to 320 kilometers per hour. Such cyclones are accompanied by torrential rains and storm surges, a rapid rise in sea level, which can exceed the normal level by up to 6 meters. This combination makes cyclones a serious danger to coastal areas in tropical and subtropical regions of the world. One such region was located on the shores of the Bay of Bengal, located in the northeastern part of the Indian Ocean, washing the shores of India, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Sri Lanka. Every year, in spring and autumn, an average of 5 tropical cyclones reach this area. Bangladesh is particularly vulnerable to floods and cyclones. 35% of the country's territory is less than 6 meters above sea level. However, the deadliest cyclone in history was Cyclone Bhoola. Formed in the Bay of Bengal on November 8, 1970. At that time, the method of assessing cyclone strength via satellite had only just begun to be used in the United States, so its strength remained unknown. For 2 days, Bhoola drifted slowly northward, but by November 10th it began to accelerate and intensify, becoming a well-defined cyclone with sustained winds of 137 to 145 kilometers per hour by 11 November. It moved further north, and on the night of 12 November entered the low-lying area of the Ganges Delta, with wind speeds exceeding 225.3 kilometers per hour. 2 other, but similar figures are also cited: 205 kilometers per hour and 222 kilometers per hour. The water level rose by 6 meters, according to other sources, 10.5 meters. Unsurprisingly, the coast of eastern India, and especially eastern Pakistan, found themselves underwater. 6 hours in the ocean and a palm tree as salvation. The exact number of victims remains unknown. The Pakistani government stated that 191,951 bodies had been found and that around 150,000 people were missing. However, this figure does not include tens of thousands of people who were swept out to sea, buried in mud, or who died on remote islands, whose bodies were never found. Therefore, the total number of victims is estimated to be between 300,000 and approximately 500,000 people. Most people died from drowning. Caught off guard, they had nowhere to hide. The unfortunate victims clung to trees, but strong winds tore them down, and unusually high tides carried their bodies out to sea. The bodies were later found scattered across the beaches. In the worst-hit administrative district of Tazamuddin, more than 45% of the population died, and before the disaster, 167,000 people lived there. An equally horrific scene was observed on the Bangladeshi island of Manpara, where 16.5 out of 22,000 local residents died. Many cows, sheep, goats, and buffaloes also perished. Only a few hundred out of 20,000 survived. The entire rice crop was destroyed, as were the fishermen's boats. It was midnight. No one was asleep because the radio had broadcast a storm warning, but no one mentioned a tidal wave. In the darkness, we saw a beam of light approaching, heard a thunderous roar, and water rushed towards us. Those who lived in houses with upper floors survived. Tropical cyclones were and remain typical for this region. Why were so many people affected in 1970? Of course, one reason is the scale of the disaster. When it comes to 6 or 10-meter waves, the chances of survival are slim. But there could have been fewer casualties if the population had been warned. However, a comprehensive warning system for such natural disasters did not appear until later. Without proper warning, local residents, accustomed to cyclones, did not understand that they needed to seek shelter and move to higher ground. It is estimated that 90% of people on the coast knew about the approaching storm, but less than 1% sought higher ground or stronger buildings. In addition, there were not enough shelters in the region, and where there were, there was not enough money to get to them. One reason for this appears to have been the attitude of the authorities towards the local population. When meteorologist Neil Frank met with one of the Pakistani generals, he told him confidentially, "You see, Neil, this cyclone has solved about 500,000 of our problems." After that, Frank concluded that the system failure was not technical. It was political. Abdul Hamid Khan Bashani, a prominent Bengali scholar and leader of the local National Liberation Movement, was the first politician to arrive in the storm-ravaged area. He accused the Pakistani authorities of heartlessness and indifference. During morning prayers, Bashani called for jihad and declared that it was necessary to fight this injustice and create an independent East Pakistan. By coincidence, general elections had been scheduled for December 1970. The decision to hold them had been made before the cyclone struck. Abdul Hamid Khan Bashani, a prominent Bengali scholar and leader of the local National Liberation Movement, was the first politician to arrive in the storm-ravaged area. He accused the Pakistani authorities of heartlessness and indifference. During morning prayers, Bashani called for jihad and declared that it was necessary to fight this injustice and create an independent East Pakistan. By coincidence, general elections had been scheduled for December 1970. The decision to hold them had been made before the cyclone struck. Nixon unsuccessfully attempted to negotiate a ceasefire with Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. With its neighbor involved in the war, West Pakistan lost strength and offered to surrender on December 16, 1971. Thus, Bangladesh was born.